All right, what is up, guys? So I just finished watching the Rings of Power episode 2. This is a little bit later than I'd anticipated being able to stream. Uh, I ended up watching it a little bit later, and then I had some business to take care of. So a couple hours late, not a big deal. Um, let's go ahead and kind of get into it. I like this episode more than I liked the last episode. Let me just adjust exposure here real quick. Let me know how this is looking, guys. I think that's a little better. um, but yeah, so I like this episode more. I feel like we're starting to get a little bit more into it, a little bit more into the meat of what we are going to be experiencing in this show, which of course I'm very happy about and like quite a bit because I think this show we need, we've only got, I believe, 8 episodes in this first season, maybe 10. I can't remember, but anyways, short season, so we gotta get moving. And so let's go ahead and get into the breakdown and I'll kind of share my thoughts on stuff. So we start with Galadriel. She's just jumped off the ship. It's dark. She's swimming. My only, kind of minor quibble is like, why? How are you able to swim for hours and hours and hours to get you're an elf? But that seems a little crazy to me, and kind of like why she decided to jump when there was literally like nothing for miles and miles and miles and miles. A little weird, but hey, we're just going with it. And then we jump back to the Harfoots, where we pick up right where we left off last episode at the end, where they find the guy who fell from the sky in a meteor, and they kind of like talk to him, and he seems to have some weird, crazy magical powers. He like grabs Nori, and then crazy stuff happens, and then he passes out again. So that's cool. I definitely have questions throughout this episode, like what his deal is. Is he like one of the Maiar? Is he maybe Radagast? Again, I'm not super familiar with the Second Age, and I didn't want to get super familiar with it because I didn't want, my experience of the show to be super tainted by it not being exactly the way that the appendices went or things like that. So, so yeah, I'm not really sure who he is, who he's supposed to be. So that's one of the big mysteries that as the show goes on, we'll no doubt get the answers to. But very, very interesting. And then Nori and her friend have a discussion about, hey, what should we do? Her friend is like, we just got to leave him. This is crazy. This is not our problem. And Nori's like, I feel like I need to help him. And so, of course, they end up helping him. Have a couple little funny moments where they're arguing and he goes down the hill in the little wheelbarrow thing. Then they set him up with a nice little tent. Then we cut back to Arondir and Bronwyn, and then them kind of exploring this town that seems to have been completely destroyed. They're not sure by what. They find a pit, and Arondir, I want to make sure that it is Arondir because I feel like that could in fact be wrong. So give me 1 second, guys. Let's see, Rings of Power. Oh yeah, let me turn off my sound on my computer, make sure I'm not getting any Facebook notifications. Yes, Arondir. Okay, brilliant. Thankfully, they have this nice little cheat sheet on Amazon Prime's website, so I can just look up the characters' names if I need to. But anyways, jumping back over here, so Arondir and Bronwyn are exploring. Arondir decides, okay, I've got to go follow this pit. Sends Bronwyn back to the town to warn people, try and get them out, because there's clearly some shenanigans going on here. And then we jump over to Elrond and Celebrimbor. Sorry about that. They jump back to Elrond and Celebrimbor kind of talks about, his grandmaster planned to build this amazing forge, but it's not going to be able to be done in the timeline that they want. Elrond's like, I'll tap some old friendships with the dwarves. They go to Khazad-dûm. They're turned away. Elrond invokes kind of an ancient competition. He's let in. Celebrimbor goes back. So far, I'm not upset about Celebrimbor. I know some people have said he seems too old and creepy, because I guess in the appendices he maybe had a thing for Galadriel in some versions, or that may have been kind of Tolkien's unfinished writings. It's all a little bit fuzzy since I'm not as deeply versed in the Tolkien lore, but then he's kind of out of the picture. But I don't really have a problem with him. He seems interesting, knowing kind of a little where his story goes, that it's probably definitely going to go in this series. That's going to be interesting. I'm just going to let that ring. So sorry, guys. Sometimes phone calls happen. Let's see what we got going on next. Alright, so we got, Khazad-dûm. So then Elrond's escorted through Khazad-dûm. Absolutely one of my favorite parts of the episode. It's absolutely gorgeous. Again, like episode 1, the money is in fact on the screen in this one, which is great to see. It's not, just going into the pockets of the producers or really high tier A-list actors or anything. At least to me, all the actors in this show pretty much are unknowns. There was one actor that I did recognize from Spartacus, but he had a pretty minor role. But pretty much everybody else is unknown to me, at least. Sorry. Spectrum keeps spamming me, trying to get me to switch from Google Fiber. It's annoying, but hey, it is what it is. I'm so sorry, guys. This is why lives are interesting, for sure. Let's see. Oh yeah, so Khazad-dûm, really fun. I really like the design of Khazad-dûm. I really like seeing it in what really, I presume, kind of like its prime, because in Lord of the Rings we saw it as very, very empty. Obviously it's a little bit of a different design. It almost feels like it took a little bit of inspiration from some of the concept art that we saw from what was going to be Guillermo del Toro's Hobbit movies, versus Peter Jackson's. You can definitely see some similarities between all of that. It feels like it kind of could fit all into that world, but really enjoyed that and them starting the competition. You can tell, something's going on where Prince Durin is not as excited to see Elrond as Elrond expected. That obviously gets revealed a little later in the episode, but pretty cool. Let's see. Then we go back to the Harfoots, and we find our mysterious stranger guy has left, and they find him, and he kind of freaks out and is like doing crazy stuff. Nori's able to kind of get him calmed down, teaches him how to eat. He's like eating the whole snails. That was a little bit gross, but hey, it's all good. Then we get the Harfoots are kind of getting ready for their festival, and we see this guy. I didn't quite fully understand if he was actually doing the dark magic or if he was just sensing the dark magic, where Nori's father was trying to put up a post and then like his leg snapped and the rope snapped and all kinds of stuff, and he ended up getting hurt. I was a little unsure if that guy was actually responsible. I think that will be revealed in upcoming episode or two, but kind of an interesting little subplot there. Then we get more of Galadriel swimming, keep on swimming, keep on swimming, and then they come on to a little raft, and a lot of the people are really suspicious of her, and then we get this crazy sea monster that attacks the raft, kills pretty much everybody. Galadriel like bails for it, which I thought was interesting. I feel like that was maybe a little bit out of the character that they're establishing for her, because I feel like she's just like, I want to fight everything, but she was like, I'm out, people, bye. And one guy survives and kind of helps her, but that's kind of where that goes. We got to know those people a little bit, but I didn't really care about any of them that they died. It was like, oh well, they're gone now, no worries. So I feel like Galadriel doesn't really have a ton of like character in this episode, at least so far, because she's really just like swimming, swimming, swimming. And then Elrond loses the competition to the dwarf. No surprise, he's like a master miner. But being crafty as Elrond is, he asks Durin to escort him out. Then we kind of have it out between the two of them, where Durin's really upset that Elrond was not there for the last 20 years when he got married, had kids, everything. There's a lot of kind of butthurt going on there between the two of them. And Elrond manages to convince him to let him apologize to his wife and kids. But Durin's like, that's it. Then you leave. No staying for dinner, nothing. And Elrond's like, yeah, that's cool. And then he meets them. I actually quite love Durin's wife. Delightful character. I know there was a lot of skepticism when the pictures came out online. You know, apparently dwarf women have beards in Tolkien lore. That's a thing that I see a lot of people have really complained about. Frankly, I don't care. I mean, let's be honest, I don't necessarily want to see bearded women in a show, like if I'm just honest. So I'm totally fine with dwarf women not having beards. Again, I found the actress quite delightful, her and Durin's chemistry quite delightful, and just her interacting with Elrond quite delightful. Yeah, I found that whole scene quite wonderful, quite fun, quite heartwarming, a little bit funny. I loved her kind of trying to help make peace between Elrond and Durin, getting a little bit of their history. I really am enjoying, his name is escaping me, but the actor who plays Elrond, yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but the actor who plays Elrond, I quite enjoy his performance. I think he's quite good, definitely one of the standout actors in the series. And I was somebody who was pretty skeptical of him, particularly his look of, you know, like the short hair and stuff. I'm definitely getting used to it. Hey, Mr. P.W. Miles. Hello, silly moniker. I can't don't quite understand what that means. If you can go ahead and explain what you mean by silly moniker. Let's see, where was I? I'm definitely watching the chat for that explanation. Let's see, then we go back to Galadriel and the dude, learn a little bit about their characters. And got a little bit deep. Yeah, I got a little bit deeper into their characters, but you know, kind of started to see, okay, he's been injured by the orcs, and the orcs killed a bunch of his people, and obviously that relates to Galadriel, and she's very interested in that and wants him to help her, and he's not really interested in that at all. So, you know, got a little bit deeper there. Then we see that a storm is brewing. And then we jump back to the little town with Bronwyn, and she tries to convince the townspeople. They're like, meh, you know, so, you know, that's cool. You know, kind of expected, ignore the woman, whatever. And then her son thinks it's rats and kind of beats them. And I actually like this because it harkened back to the first episode with something that I really honestly didn't think that much about in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm like, okay, there's rats, whatever. But it turns out it was actually an orc digging. And then they have a great little scene where there's kind of playing cat and mouse with the orc, and then they have a fight with the orc. I liked this fight a lot better than I did any of the fights in episode 1. I felt like it was actually much more of a complete fight. It did feel a little bit fan filmy, and I don't necessarily mean that in a terrible way. I kind of realized that the Rings of Power reminds me a lot of a fan film called Born of Hope that came out a good number of years ago now, actually. That was pretty good about Arathorn and all of that, and like baby Aragorn and stuff. Quite enjoyed that film actually, but this definitely had kind of vibes more along that line versus like the actual Peter Jackson films. So I realized, okay, I don't necessarily hate that actually. Just kind of is a little bit of a different flavor, but I can enjoy it. I enjoyed that fan film quite a bit. But they end up killing the orc, and then we cut back to the storm and have a kind of a little action sequence with the storm, which was fine. I feel like it was basically there just to kind of solidify that, okay, this guy isn't actually a bad dude, and he's willing to rescue Galadriel. I liked that Galadriel actually had some peril that she needed help from, because one thing that a lot of people were saying with episode 1, Mary Sue, she can do everything, would have been a little annoying if she'd rescued the guy. So it was like, okay, great. We're seeing that she's not all invincible, all perfect, everything like that. So I did like that. Again, another very beautifully shot scene. Then we kind of jump back over to our Harfoot friends. They talk to the kind of the mystery guy. I'm still so curious who he is. He obviously has some kind of connection to nature, which again, I wish that I knew who he was, but I'm just gonna wait and see, not speculate too much. I think it's, you know, it's possible that it is a wizard like Radagast or somebody similar, maybe a new character, but he ends up killing like the fireflies. He like makes them all into the stars, and I'm presuming he's the one that kills them. I'm not entirely convinced that he's good now that I think about it. I feel like he might actually be dark and evil, but I'm not sure. Then we cut to Durin and his father, and we can see that there's definitely going to be some headbutting and tension between the elves and the humans. His father doesn't trust them at all, and he's inclined to trust Elrond because he knows Elrond, and they've kind of been able to make up. So I'll be interested to see kind of what dwarf tension goes on there. Let's see. Then we cut back to the village, and I can't think what Bronwyn's son's name is. Let me see. Theo. Theo is playing with the sword. Then it kind of like sucks up some of his blood, and the sword starts to reforge itself. Wondering kind of what's going on with that. Presumably, he's going to have something to do with potentially, I don't know, Sauron returning, but interesting scene kind of hinting at what we might get in future. Really nothing that I objected to as a Tolkien fan in that. But again, as I'm constantly reiterating, I'm not like the deepest Tolkien scholar. Then they leave, heading towards the Elf Tower. And then our final scene is Galadriel and the guy waking up, and there's a ship with somebody in a cape, and we don't know who that is. And that is basically the end of the episode. So kind of my overall thoughts with kind of my review of episode 1, you know, the question I was asking is this garbage? And I absolutely don't think so. I feel the first one I was kind of like, okay, this is a little bit slow, this is dragging. I did not find this episode drug at all. I think for what it is, I'm really enjoying it. Um, but that's kind of my thoughts. I'm trying to think if there's any other big thoughts that I have got. Um, yeah, I really am feeling more generally positive about the show. I don't think it's likely to hit the peak of what Peter Jackson did. But again, that could be just some bias. I grew up with the Peter Jackson films. I grew up with the Lord of the Rings books. There is that, kind of jaded adult thing that happens as we get older and we're like, it's not the same as when we were kids. The same thing happens with all the new Star Wars movies and TV shows, is there's always this little part of my brain that's critiquing it versus what came before and what's familiar versus kind of just taking it on its own, whereas something where I'm not familiar with the source material, like The Witcher, for example, I can just like take as what it is, where I know people who love the Witcher books, felt much less positively about particularly the second season than I did. So it's just a matter of our bias and experience, but it's definitely a very beautiful show, very well put together show. I'd heard some people complain that the dialogue dragged on too much and like the scenes could have been a lot shorter. I felt that in episode 1. I did not personally feel that as much in episode 2. So I'll be very interested to see where the story goes. We've obviously got a lot of questions. I really have no concept of where it's going, except eventually where Celebrimbor's story is going to go, since that's been well established in the appendices and I am familiar with that part of the story. I don't know, as far as certainly the Harfoots, since they're not even in the appendices at all. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. As far as the Harfoots go, in episode 1, I was kind of like, it's sort of taking me out of it a little bit with, not being a part of it. But I've really, in this episode, like the Harfoots and feel like it makes sense now that they're in it. I don't know exactly where their story is going, but I really enjoy the actress who's playing Nori. Mr. Mutton Chops is really starting to grow on me. Let me see what his name is. Let's see. Harfoots. Let's see, we've got Nori. Her friend is Poppy. Her dad is Largo. Sadok, he's the old Mutton Chops guy. I'm starting to enjoy him. Again, he was one of the parts of the show I was most skeptical of. But, nothing wrong there at all. Let me see what else we got going on. I think that's really kind of going to wrap it up for me, because I really don't have any big predictions for where this is going. Again, it's not a show that's necessarily... I'm clamoring for the next episode. It's not like, I need this. It's not like kind of Stranger Things is the last thing that I watched that was really kind of in this format. And I wasn't like I'm clamoring for episode 3 like I was for the next one of Stranger Things. I'm content to wait a week and see what happens. It's not like this is absolute must see now, must know what's happening. And I'll have to see if that feels like a strength or a weakness of the show, because I definitely enjoyed what I saw, but it's not like I'm absolutely desperate for the next one. So that's really it, guys. Let me know if you're watching on the replay what you thought of episode 2 in the comments below, whether you liked it, whether you hated it, and I will catch you in the next one.